Welcome to your colleagues. It is 257th day of war. It is Natalia Staroprava with you. We start our briefings at Mediacentru Ukraine. We know that we already started the heating process in healthcare facilities, educational facilities, and I want to invite Oleksandr Odynets, director at the Department of Housing and Infrastructure at the Lviv City Council, to tell us more about the current situation. Good morning, everyone. I want to say that today in the city of Lviv, we have already started the heating season for objects of the so-called humanitarian bloc. As of today, it is 114 educational facilities, 21 healthcare facilities, and we keep working on starting the heating season in some other institutions, cultural objects, and other education-related facilities. Also, we start the work of different boiler houses. If to talk in general about the situation with the heating season in Lviv, we have managed to reach our planning goals, which we had at the end of the previous heating season. And I also want to say that this is the information which is well known already because we are working on our infrastructure, our boilers, our networks, and despite all the challenges this year, we also managed to replace 6 kilometers of heat networks with insulated piping. We also had the reconstruction of different boiler facilities at our power stations. We also examined and checked some other facilities which are important for our communal enterprises. So we got ready for the heating season, and we also understand that this year the heating season will be a challenging one, the most challenging, because apart from standard practices of us getting ready for the heating season, in which we are quite successful, and we know it because we didn't have any issues during the past heating seasons. We didn't have any major accidents, and it is because of this very thorough process of getting ready for the heating season. Despite this fact, we understand that we really had to get better in terms of preparation for the heating season, to think about some alternatives for the city to be able to remain operational in case we have some unstandard scenarios unfolding. Well, what kind of alternatives you are talking about? We understand that there is a possibility of the damage to the critical infrastructure related to this field, and in order to recover from this damage within a short time frame, that could be quite difficult. That is why if it does happen to critical infrastructure and we wouldn't have enough resources, I'm talking about gas and electricity, we understand that we will have to resort to some non-standard measures and non-conventional ones. That is why we started a campaign. We use these metal stoves, and we have some up to 700 stoves, which we call burzhuika. We have them in shelters of high-rise buildings, and we also have these stoves for almost all schools. There is also a possibility for us to have some educational facilities using solid fuel. In case there is no gas, no electricity, it will be possible for us to use solid fuel that we are also buying, and we are forming the stock of it. And with this solid fuel, it will be possible for us to provide heating to our educational facilities and other facilities. Well, I cannot provide details here, but it will be possible for us to have these warming centers for the residents in case there is some damage inflicted on our critical infrastructure. And also with solid fuel, I think it also can work for our healthcare facilities, and here I'm talking about emergency medicine hospitals and also our inpatient hospitals. We do not talk about regular polyclinics here because we understand that under such conditions their activities will be limited. Then apart from stoves and solid fuel, we also have a campaign of buying generators. We procured generators, we purchased generators for our key infrastructure during this critical period to make sure that we have a certain level of service provision. And also we have a program to reimburse the cost of generators for co-residents of high-rise buildings. Why did we decide to launch this program? If you have a high-rise building with multiple apartments, we know that if you talk about engineering, there are some peculiarities of it functioning, because if the city provides for the residents with its capacity and provision of water supplies and power, then sometimes when we talk about high-rise buildings, to make sure that water reaches some top floors, you need to have some power which goes to some other facilities. So that is why we can talk about the importance of this system for warming centers and others. And there are no restrictions for residents. That is why they can purchase such generators to make sure that elevators keep working, or to charge their gadgets or for any other purposes. So that is the generator for purposes of the residents of a certain high-rise building. So what do the citizens of the city have to do to receive this reimbursement? The executive committee of the Lviv City Council has already adopted a program. It was done last week, and the Center of Administrative Services provision are ready to receive some requests and actually to receive all the necessary documentation about the purchase of generators. So I think if you have condominiums or just a group of residents, they can actually have a meeting organized to agree upon the purchase of a generator. Then there is a person who is designated by the company which is responsible for the building, or a condominium, or generally the person who is in charge of the management of high-rise building. They apply for this generator, then they buy it. It's very important to make sure that you have all the necessary documents, that you have an invoice, that you have some documents about payment, some documents from bank. Then together with this application form, you submit these documents, and rayon administrations of the city, they work on these documents, so they can also pay a visit to this building to check if the generator is there, if it is new, to have some visual assessment. And then 50% of the cost of generators will be compensated from the local budget. But I also want to stress that there is a certain limit. We cannot reimburse the cost if 50% of the cost of generator is more than 30,000 hryvnias. Well, this is not a formalized number. It was based on some general calculations and also the potential of our budget, because we know that we have many high-rise buildings. We have some 7,000 buildings which have more than 3 floors, and you can understand that it translates into quite a big number of generators. That is why it was important for us to set a certain limit. It was not about the capacity. We focused more on the cost, on the price of a generator. We thought that it would be more viable. And what is the budget for this program? Well, the program will be financed depending on the applications which we receive. So there is an algorithm of compensation of the cost. Here we cannot talk about specific numbers because we don't have any applications information about them for the very first week. So it will be like 10 millions at first allocated. If there is a need, then more funding will be added from the city budget, and this is the stand of the city mayor, and this is something which was also discussed with local deputies. Do you have any questions? No. Okay, so how much time should pass for the generator to be installed and then to receive the compensation for this generator? We didn't set any deadlines in the program, and because it is a new mechanism which was proposed as part of the state program, but I think that such application and such decisions, they will be reviewed within 1 week, and I think that up to about 10 days or 2 weeks, that is the time for the compensation. Okay, so what about Lviv Eyes? Because we know that we already started the heating season in some of the objects, but what about residential facilities? Well, this is a very common question right now. We monitor temperature data. We receive the information from our meteorological servers. Also, public opinion is important to us. But I want to remind everyone that we are living in very special times, the times of aggression. That is why we should all show some understanding as far as resources and their consumption are concerned. We plan to start the heating season on Monday the next week, but it depends on the temperature and some other circumstances. We keep monitoring this, and if there is a decision that we need to do it earlier, then we will do it, but we know it from the weather forecast that probably this is something which is not needed, but we will take the decision which has to be taken, of course. All those measures taken by the city allow us during the heating season to start the process within 2 days, so it is not weeks or months. It takes only 2 weeks for us to start the heating season. When we talk about all our heat power stations, well, there could be some issues with some of their objects, but otherwise the system is ready. This is an open question as of now. Oleksandr Odynets, Director at the Department of Housing and Infrastructure of the Lviv City Council. Thank you, Mr. Odynets. Thank you for this conversation, and we will meet very soon. Follow our update.